last words in terms of basic information that you feel people should know about appeals?
I don't think so. I would just say that when you're reading those rules, it's
Yeah,
really important to make your own lists. Because though I've been dealing with the rules for years, I have a habit that really serves me well. So if I look at a complicated rule, it's got
yeah,
7 or 8 parts or whatever. Okay,
right.
I make a list of everything I have to do under that rule. So I've got a notepad here. I just go. So there are 7 things I have to do, but within those 7 things, there are other things I have to do to make those things happen. So I might come up with in the end with a list of 12 or 13 items, right? And then I just check them off. Check them off. That's
Mm.
done. That's done. That's done. So I know when the list is done, I've fully satisfied the requirements of this complicated rule.
Oh, wow.
And
Okay.
right. And sometimes as you're checking things off, you realize there are things that you've left out. And in the particular circumstance of your case, there are other issues that you've got to deal with to meet the requirements of the rule. And so you started with 12 or 13 items and you've checked off 6, but now you realize you could add 2 more to the list. So it's a very important just as to make sure you get it right because the rules are complicated to make
Yeah.
your own list and revise the list as necessary. And it's a great feeling when you come to the end of the list and you've completed all the requirements under that rule. Yeah, then you sleep well at night.
Oh, that sounds good. So speaking of complication, I actually want to ask you one question about your services, because
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, a lot of people reach out to me and they need assistance, either substantively or procedurally, on how to work out an appeal. Can you offer coaching services for
Oh
self-reps?
yeah, yes, I do.
Okay.
I have been helping self-represented litigants for quite a few years, and so yeah, I provide
Oh,
coaching services, and I can help them draft documents. I mean, I can help a self-represented litigant on all aspects of the case, and we would just have to decide within a limited scope retainer where I'm going to help and how I'm going to help and how much time will be allocated. So most self-represented litigants have a budget. And
right.
so I try to
Yeah.
provide a range of services that will be really effective for them and advance their case, but also stay within their budget. So that usually involves creating priorities. So you
Okay.
really need help on your factor, or you really need help with your
Yeah.
motion, or you really,
Yeah.
and so that's how I work with self reps, and it works out really well.
Well, that's fantastic because I'm going to put you, if you don't mind, I'm going to put your name on the Litigation Help private legal coaches page.
Please
Can
put
I
me on the
do that?
list. And I mean, since I do have I don't have a huge amount of courtroom experience compared to some lawyers, going to court every week. But I've certainly appealed at all levels of the court system. I know what's required in terms of the protocols of oral presentation. But I'm also a professional public speaker,
Right.
so I am able to coach people on public speaking and different modalities of presentation that they need to master to go into the courtroom and do the job the right way. So that's something that
Oh,
I'm
that's
able to
great.
assist with that most lawyers don't have in their toolkit. So, and I
Yeah.
really enjoy that part of it of helping people learn how to express themselves in a high
Yeah.
pressure situation and what
Yeah.
to do to keep yourself calm and what
Yeah.
to maintain your organization and your clarity throughout your submissions.
I know exactly because it's so nerve-wracking, right? To kind of think about having to speak, even on Zoom, it is pretty nerve-wracking, right? To think you're going to be speaking in front of a judge.
Right.
And so if they can practice before you and just kind of get all the kinks out of the way and you can tell them how to improve, um, that,
Well, I have a bag of tricks that I use for myself.
aha.
Okay. I don't disclose all of them, but I'm always working on my own technique.
Yeah, yeah,
Different forums provide different challenges. I mean,
yeah,
there's one challenge if you're appearing on Zoom, it's another challenge if you're in the courtroom, and so on.
yeah.
And so I've worked out a set of sort of guidelines that help in many different situations. So I'm always happy to share those with clients.
Michael, do you prefer in person or do you prefer Zoom?
I can do either. You mean for presentation in court?
Which one do you prefer, like when you're arguing for a client, like when you're representing a client?
That really depends,
Oh,
because I mean, the doctor's case that I was talking about earlier, I wanted that to be in court. Tell you
yeah,
the advantage of being in court and being in person is that you can gauge the chemistry, the psychological dynamics that are emerging in the course of the proceeding,
yeah,
because You can see the other lawyers, you can see the judges. I mean, you're right there with them.
Yeah.
And there's a kind of quantum level of awareness that you have in situations like that.
Right.
And you're working from the mood. And does the court seem to be with you or against you? Is the other
Oh, wow.
side, where is it? Is it on the defensive, or is it feeling very confident and aggressive? And all this. You, at any given moment, you have to read the room. And
Wow.
reading the room may determine how you make your next submission. It may determine the very words that come out of your mouth in the next sentence that you utter.
Oh, wow. You really have to think on your feet.
Right. But you're getting the feedback, you're getting the information
Yeah.
from the situation. And you're able then to assess that and be agile and make changes as necessary. So if you get a sense that you're working along a certain line of argument, and you can just feel from the court expressions, body language, and this kind of invisible psychic energy that's in the courtroom, you might get a sense right away, you know what, they don't want me to go down that road. And so you might just pull back before they say anything and
But you
just
can watch
wrap up.
people's faces though on Zoom. You can still watch people's faces, can't
It's
you?
not the same.
Really?
It's not the same. And also, when you're presenting on Zoom, it's very hard to keep track of the faces on the screen and your notes in front of you and your exhibits. And so, when
Interesting.
I'm presenting on Zoom, I mean, I'm not looking at the judge the whole time. And just the way Zoom's set up, like you might have a
Yeah.
panel of judges that are in a little, like
Yeah.
in a horizontal,
Right.
window at the top or
Yes.
down the side. You're
Yeah.
actually not seeing their faces, close up,
Yeah.
right? Until they ask a question or make a comment,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So Zoom, I think, puts you at a great disadvantage in that way.
Interesting.
But the advantage of Zoom is that you're able to organize your materials and your presentations so that you have, you might say, more materials at your disposal at any given moment than you would in the courtroom where you're just standing
Interesting.
at the podium. There's some advantages to Zoom in terms of access to materials and where you place your notes and
Yeah. Yeah.
all that kind of thing. But the disadvantage is that you don't get a sense of the chemistry in the room. So all things being equal, I would probably prefer, like I wanted to be in the courtroom in this doctor's case because I felt that I could put the lawyers on the other side on the defensive in relation to certain matters. And
Interesting.
I wanted to see how they were going to react to that and whether I could get the reaction that I wanted and how that might play into my ultimate goal, of course, of winning the case for the client. You see, this
Um,
is why I've had success as a professional public speaker,
hmm.
because uh, I I get a strong sense of my connection with the audience. I don't know why I have that, but I've had that ever since I was a teenager. And I started performing in school and giving speeches, doing little comedy bits. I used to do little comedy show in high school. And you'd pretty quickly find out whether you're being funny or not. Brutally, you find out very brutally, very quickly whether you're being funny. But you can develop a sense for whether your audience is with you or not with you. And as a professional speaker, I mean, I can be on stage, say, with 1,500 people at the Metro Convention Center. And when I'm in the zone, I know that, like, if I say something that is not evoking the response that I think I should get, or I feel, I can feel like in a split second, I am about to lose my audience
Wow.
if I
Wow.
continue along this line. So
Wow.
the real cue for the moment that I hear myself talking
Hmm.
that's a little alarm bell. That means you have lost your connection with the audience. So then you can quickly shift, right, and go to something else and reestablish the connection. So fortunately for me, I rarely lose my audience. So, but I sometimes know, I develop a sense sometimes, or I have the sense now where I can think, I'm about to say this, but if I use that word, I could lose this audience. So use a different word. So I sometimes have a sense if you use this particular phrase or word, or utter this sentence, it could go kathud,
Hmm.
and then you'll have to recover.
Well,
You see,
you've
in
got, yeah.
professional speeches where you're getting paid really large amounts of money, in my case, to talk about my books, like
Mhm.
you can't afford to be bad for 30 seconds. Really.
Mm.
and so that requires a lot of preparation.
Wow.
I did my first major event as a best-selling author at the Metro Convention Center back in the late 90s, speaking for McKinsey Financial. And the CEO came, I met with the CEO before the big event. And it was going to be an audience of 1,500 financial advisors and investment gurus and financial planners and so on. He said to me, this is the toughest audience that you will ever face. He said, if you don't get them in the first 5 minutes, you're finished. Right. Okay. So fine. I decided to put an even higher, sort of hold myself to a higher standard. I mean,
Right.
I don't think you can afford to lose your audience for 30 seconds. And with an
Wow.
audience like that, you have to have a very powerful opening where you engage their interests, right? You fundamentally engage them, get them interested in a situation, a question, issue, whatever. And so you've got right from your opening words, you have to grab the audience. And then, and if you do that, then it's not too hard to hold on. So I try to distill these lessons that I've learned from working as a professional speaker for 25 years. I try to make those lessons available to clients I help.
Michael,
And
but for yourself now, when you practice, do you rehearse out loud before you have to make a speech, or
uh,
do
it,
you do
uh,
that?
yeah, it really depends. It
Oh,
really depends. And because there are certain situations where I will actually read something out that I have on notes, right?
okay.
Because like there might be a fact situation that's very complicated. And so I want to make sure, particularly if that's part of my opening, that I'm very clear on that aspect. So I may have that all written out and I may just kind of read it out. But generally, you just don't want to be reading to a court. They expect you to have
Right.
right a fundamental command of the issues, and you speak to
Yeah.
the issues, and you're fluent and conversant. You just don't read. So you do have to prepare for that. So yes, practicing really helps. And if you're a self rep, you really want to practice.
Right. Right.
What's interesting about practicing is that once you've written something out or you have an idea, you somehow got in writing some idea about how you want to express an idea.
Right.
You may find the first time you express it when you're practicing that it doesn't feel right. And
Mm,
through practice, you will eventually find that you fall into a use of words that is personal to you and you're very comfortable with.
mm.
And so that's one of the advantages of practice is you identify your own lexicon and what you're comfortable with and so that really helps when it comes to it also helps you to remember what you want to say, right? Because certain phrases will be in your mind. That's the way I like to express this.
Yeah,
So
that's
that
interesting.
yeah, so practicing really helps. And sometimes when you're speaking out loud, you'll discover that you don't understand what you're saying as well as you thought. Okay, so that's the real benefit of practice, is that you listen to yourself and you realize, I thought I had that concept mastered.
That's
Turns
interesting.
out it needs some more work.
That is really interesting because, yeah, I think I agree with you that even for little speeches, I write it down and I think it's perfect, but when I say it out loud, I go, that sounds not right. Doesn't
Mhm.
sound right. I have to, it's whatever. Yeah.
Right, and you have to trust yourself on it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But that's the only way you can find out. And sometimes, like for instance, before I went to the Supreme Court, I put a test audience together, right? In a boardroom at a friend's office. So I invited people from different backgrounds and I
Oh,
put them at
wow.
this big board table. And then I stood there and spoke as if I was speaking to the Supreme Court. And so I did a trial run. And so wanted to get their feedback on whether I was being clear and coherent and organized.
Oh, wow. That's pretty serious. You're getting your friends to listen to your performance,
Correct.
so to speak, beforehand.
Right. And
Yeah.
so what happens in some law firms, for instance, I mean, some major law firms, they will put lawyers together in a panel. And if you got a really important case, they'll have a dedicated room for
Mm,
for
interesting.
practicing their submissions. And then
Yes, yes.
you will stand up there and you'll be pilloried by your colleagues. And that's
Oh my
and,
goodness.
and hopefully they'll give you such a hard time that what you go through with the court will be, child's play.
It's all relative.
Right. It's all relative.
Well, Okay, so any last words before I kind of wrap up? You did really
I would
well.
just say this, the system is getting more complicated all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
There are more rules. They have something called practice directions now that build on the rules. The
Yes.
practice directions change. And then we have this new filing system called case lines, which is very complicated. So the
Yeah.
system is getting harder and harder for lawyers to navigate. And so
Yes.
that makes it really difficult for self-represented litigants.
Yes.
So that's where coaching can really help a litigant, because you would hope, I mean, we've been talking about access for justice in this country for a long time. And here in
Yes.
Ontario, we're just making the system so complicated now that
Yeah.
access to justice is difficult, not just for self-represented litigants, but also for lawyers,
Yes. Yes.
right? So, it's
So
always a good
true.
idea to get a second opinion about how the system works.
Right. Okay, so on that note, thank you, Michael, for coming in today to tell us about appeals and the bonus
Yeah.
bonus section at the end of
Okay.
tips on how to present. And so for everyone, I'm including some links to extra information and readings and guides on appeals as well. And thank you for everyone watching, and we'll see you the next time. Bye.